Welcome to the Freedom to Learn podcast. I'm your host, Ginny Gentles. This season, we're diving into what it means to return education to states, communities, and families. And we're exploring what becomes possible when education is freed from union dominance and federal control.
I'm the oldest of 4 girls in my family, and I'm also an athlete. And I'm here today to share my concern as a student, an athlete, and an older sister. The thought of a biological male in the women's bathroom and locker room is frightening to me. The bathroom in the locker room is a very private place for me to be able to feel safe without the fear of a male entering. It's a very vulnerable space, and girls of this age especially have a hard enough time changing in front of their peers or teammates.
There are about 40 girls deep in the high school for the single stall bathroom. So now what is that doing to their time learning in the classroom? And how is that going to affect them when it comes to being educated? I don't care. Your parents have the right to choose, but you guys stripped that.
When parents in a small Wisconsin community discovered that male students are allowed to use girls' bathrooms at their local high school, while girls' concerns are being disregarded, they didn't stay silent. This week on Freedom to Learn, Cory Brewer, Deputy Counsel with the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, or WIL, joins me to unpack what's happening in New Richmond, Wisconsin, and what should happen next in the fight for female spaces and safety. Cory works at the forefront of some of the most pressing legal debates in education today, including Title IX, parental rights, and student privacy. We discuss what the New Richmond policy debate reveals about regulatory confusion, school board governance, and the urgent need for Title IX regulatory and legal clarity. Cory Brewer, welcome to Freedom to Learn.
Thank you for having me. It's great to join you.
You work for Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. What's the organization's mission?
Yeah, we're based in Milwaukee, but over the last few years, we've really expanded to doing more national work, especially when it comes to education policy and some federal litigation as well. So really, our mission is related to constitutional principles, the rule of law. We do a lot of work related to First Amendment, free speech, freedom of religion, Title IX, equal protection, separation of powers, and it keeps us busy.
Well, Cory, I personally enjoy partnering with you on many endeavors, and I know DFI appreciates partnering with WIL on a lot of those topics and issues that you mentioned. So one that we're going to delve into today is Title IX and then some related issues, because something's going down in Wisconsin. And honestly, I've mostly been off of social media, but I have seen some posts and references to parents and students in the New Richmond, Wisconsin school district expressing concerns about the schools there allowing biological boys to use girls' bathrooms. Often community members are afraid to speak up for fear of being socially ostracized or worse. So tell us what's going on in New Richmond, and then I want to hear about what got the parents ready to speak up and be active this time.
Yeah, the reaction that I'm seeing from parents and students is unlike anything I've ever seen before. We know, unfortunately, that these policies, whether they're written policies adopted by the board or not, are unfortunately fairly common. There's been this movement lately where schools feel like they need to allow students that identify as transgender to use whatever bathroom that matches their gender identity. But as we'll get into, that's actually not required under Title IX, and the regulations explicitly say that schools are permitted to separate bathrooms and locker rooms by sex, as long as they're comparable for the boys and girls. But what we're seeing in New Richmond, Wisconsin is this small town, frankly. And you know what I think got the parents to speak up more than anything is the girls were uncomfortable with, this is a high school, the girls were uncomfortable with a boy using their bathroom, and they raised that with administration. And the girls were told, oh, our hands are tied. State and federal law requires this, which is not true, by the way. And you know what, girls, if you're uncomfortable, you can use the single stall. The boy gets to keep using the girls' bathrooms, but the girls are told that they can leave and use a separate bathroom. And the parents were not okay with that. They have, for a variety of reasons, as you can imagine, don't want their daughters to be uncomfortable. They're concerned about their safety, their privacy in a girl's space, and that the girls are the ones being asked to leave.
This is pretty standard, though. So I wonder if there's some kind of like best practices document or policies that's circulated by activists that say if students don't want to use these dual sex bathrooms, then they can go use the single stall or the nurses. I feel like a lot of times it's like go to the nurse's office. So the girls have to traipse all around the school building or have to wait in line.
Yes.
Or have to not access the bathroom at all, which unfortunately is something that we hear all too often because they're so uncomfortable.
Yeah, we've heard all of those things. There are some girls that just don't use the bathroom during the school day, which is obviously not good. I've heard about maps being posted in this school so that the girls know where to go if they don't want to use the girls' bathroom, which is totally backwards. And we also know that the administration is telling the girls that if they are late to class because they're waiting in line for a single stall bathroom, their tardy will be excused. Well, the girls, A, they shouldn't have to be late to class, and B, and this is really important under Title IX, this is only impacting girls. So even if the school's going to excuse a tardy because they're waiting to use a single stall bathroom, the girls are the ones missing class. The girls are the ones that are uncomfortable, who have to go across the school and use this other bathroom if they don't want to share a bathroom with a boy. And that's wrong.
So let's go back to your description of this school district, New Richmond, Wisconsin. This isn't Oregon. This isn't California or New York. You know, people might think, well, this stuff is just happening in coastal areas. This is Wisconsin, and you indicated this is a rural school district or a small town?
It is, yeah. It's up north in Wisconsin. It's actually not far from Minneapolis. But yeah, it's a small community.
How did it get brought to your attention that this was going on?
We heard from, again, like more parents than have ever contacted us, honestly, that they want to do something about this. They actually called for a special board meeting because they felt the administration and the board weren't moving quickly enough. When that special board meeting was held, numerous parents and students spoke out, most of them saying, we want girls to have separate spaces. This is common sense. Do the right thing. We actually, and we'll get into this too, Will drafted a model policy for how we believe that school districts can separate boys' bathrooms and girls' bathrooms and respect the dignity of all students. So if there's a transgender student, you can have an accommodation, but that doesn't mean the girls lose their space. So we drafted that model policy, shared it with parents. We, I'm sure like you guys as well, have drafted numerous amicus briefs on this subject. So we shared those with parents, said here's actually a full picture of the law since you're not getting it from your administration or the school's legal counsel, and encourage parents to share those with the board. And our policy, the model policy, did make it to the board, but unfortunately they're not able to get a vote. The common sense board members do not have a majority, and parents are still pushing for this to happen.
Okay, so the timeline was the girls asked for a meeting, expressed concern, were rebuffed. Parents asked for meetings, expressed concerns, rebuffed. Both groups went to the school board and expressed concern and proposed a solution. And then that solution has not been accepted or voted into policy. When we're talking about policies, you indicated that some school districts, some school boards formally do adopt policies. Some just are acting as if these are formal policies.
Right.
What's the situation in this case? Had they formally accepted a policy?
No, the policy here was not adopted by the school board. And that's another issue that the parents had, is they had no idea that this was happening. So I tell parents, whether you're in a big city, a small town, whatever the size of your school district, ask. You should ask about what the policy is, because it's not always written down. It's not something you can find. But when parents raised concerns in New Richmond, they were told by the administration that this has been the policy for years, for 6 or 7 years, that this has been the policy, and they had no clue. And it, as you can imagine, too, it took the girls a while to tell their parents, because many of these schools are conditioning the students, to be kind, don't complain, don't worry about it so much. So it's this delay. And then finally the girls are like, hey, mom, dad, there's a boy in our bathroom. I don't like this. And it took a while. And now that the parents are involved, and like you said, they've kind of been rebuffed and don't feel like they're being listened to, they reached out to us. They're speaking out at board meetings. They actually formed a parent association called New Richmond Parents for Strong Schools. So they are exploring legal options, as are we.
How did they know to reach out to you all?
That's a great question. I think referrals come from a number of different ways. I know in this case, Moms for Liberty is very involved. Scarlett Johnson has been working with the parents. Moms for Liberty did a live stream of that packed auditorium school board meeting. So I think that's one of the connections. And it's a lot of word of mouth. Some people just Google and find us, probably similar for you all at DFI. But I'm glad that they did.
I am too. And I'm also alarmed at how similar this situation is to other situations that we see around the country. So I want to applaud the parents who do decide to take action. Because you said it's not just the conditioning of the students, it's, the Facebook mom groups can be really vicious if you express a concern, and you can get taken to task and, again, socially ostracized if you're saying something that is viewed as something phobic or, not what the cool kids are saying or were saying. So you're talking about parents in Wisconsin that are like, forget all that. I'm keeping my daughter safe. And DFI, along with another organization, recently filed a federal civil rights complaint on behalf of a family in Kansas because their early elementary school daughter, starting in first grade, was being forced to share a bathroom with a boy. And similar situation, the parents kept saying, okay, well, where's this policy? Like, why is this in place? And not getting answers. But then eventually was told, oh, well, we've just been doing this for years. Why? Why have they been doing these things for years with the community not knowing? Like, why does this happen?
That's a great question. I think, like you alluded to, a lot of it is political. Some of it has to do with this circuit split we have, where the court decisions in different parts of the country on this issue are totally opposite. You have the 11th Circuit saying, of course, it doesn't violate Title IX to separate bathrooms by sex. And then here, where I'm located in the 7th Circuit, we have these court decisions saying, well, it might violate Title IX if you don't allow a transgender student to use the bathroom that aligns with their gender identity. The 7th Circuit has actually shown a willingness to reconsider that case. And I think eventually this is going to need to go to the United States Supreme Court to get some clarity and uniformity across the country, whether that's a lawsuit or whether, we see the Trump administration do something in terms of the Title IX regulations. Something needs to happen.
I want to dig into what needs to happen on the regulatory front, but before we do that, let's explore these model policies that you've offered. So this is a model school board policy that explains the legal basis for sex-separated bathrooms and their importance in protecting girls at schools.
Yes.
And can you tell us a little bit more about what's involved in the creation of a model policy and why having these policies in place are important?
Yes, Will has a whole bank of model school board policies. They're available at schoolboardpolicies.org. And this being the most recent one is right at the end of the list. It's number 42. And it's 2 pages long. So this is not a complex policy. Mm-hmm. It's 2 pages long, and it sets forth what we think is a legally sound way for school districts in any state, no matter what part of the country you're in, a legally sound way to separate bathrooms by boys and girls and accommodate the rights or any requests from transgender students in a way that respects the dignity and safety and privacy of those students, but doesn't take away, for instance, like we're seeing in New Richmond, girls' spaces. So we drafted that short model policy, and at the end of it is just a half-page legal analysis because, whether it's, well, this is the way we've always done it, or pushback from fellow board members or administrators or district legal counsel, it can be hard for a school board member to accomplish something like this. Sometimes they don't know where to begin. They're not really sure exactly what the law says and what they can and can't do. So we wanted to provide this resource, this tool for them to bring and say, let's discuss this. Here it is. It's drafted. It has a legal analysis. Let's have a discussion. And we think this is the common sense thing to do to protect girls' privacy in school.
You make such a good point that a school board member, it might be a new school board member, or just a longstanding common sense grounded school board member, when they're often slapped down by legal counsel that is there year after year, on contract for the either internal or on contract for the school board, and they'll be told, "Oh, well, you'll lose insurance if you do this," and they think, okay, and then they back off. So the option of having an organization like yours with 42 model policies saying, okay, your legal counsel is saying this one thing. Also, here's this other approach, and it is grounded in the law, and don't be afraid to pursue it. That's so important, Cory, because we did have this huge wave a few years ago of new school board members coming on, and we know they're never going to last for long. Like school boards flip and then they flip back. But if they're going to get something done, they need these tools in place, and they need the confidence to move forward with the tools.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Whether the board's being told, like you said, oh, we might not be insured if we adopt this, or, oh, you could be personally liable, or what we're hearing in New Richmond, you'll get sued. The district will get sued, and we're going to lose. You don't want that to happen, do you? Oh, and then we're going to have to use taxpayer dollars to defend the lawsuit, which if you have an insurance policy, these things are just intimidation tactics, in my opinion. And what some good legal counsel for school districts does is they'll fully explain the law to the school board, but they will respect and understand that those school board members are the locally elected representatives, and it's ultimately their decision. We're seeing too many school district attorneys almost bullying school boards into just one side of an issue, whether it's this issue or something else, feeling like there's only one way to do things rather than saying, here's the full picture, here's the risk, there's risk on both sides. Okay, ask me questions. The other thing too is sometimes the attorneys will say, no, you can't do it, it's against the law. And maybe it goes through the board president or the superintendent, and the rest of the board's just told, oh, we can't do that, it's against the law. You can ask for a legal memo. What law? Can we get an explanation? You should understand this as a school board. You're the ones making these decisions that impact the kids and the community, and you're allowed to ask questions. And I'm glad that Will is able to provide resources to facilitate those types of conversations.
Right. Beyond Will and DFI, I feel like there are conversations within the Federalist Society to make sure that there's a network of lawyers available to school districts. Like there are existing organizations like ours, but then increasingly there's an awareness, hey, like there needs to be alternative counsel access.
That's true, because there are organizations like ours, but we don't represent school districts, right? That's just not our role. We're nonprofit organizations. And what we see here, and I think this is true in many states, is it's the same few law firms typically representing all of the school districts. And I think school boards they have a desire for more options because, like I said, they don't want to be told what to do. They just want to be advised and then able to make that decision.
It might be worth some parents' time to look into just how much school districts are paying law firms. I know there's a parent in Fairfax County, Virginia, who's been looking at that, and it's like, oh, it's millions of dollars. So these law firms are not doing this for their the goodness of their heart. This is big business for them. So that whole dynamic really needs a close examination and potential overhaul. These model policies help with that. You mentioned, going back to New Richmond, the development of a parent group and then the possibility of the parent group taking further action. So the school board might say, no, we can't vote on this policy, but they might be bringing themselves into a potential legal situation because of that, right?
Yeah, for some reason, they're only looking at the risk on one side of
Yeah.
this, and they don't seem concerned about the parents, which surprises me. It does and it doesn't. But the school board meeting that I described, where it was a full auditorium, they were presented with this model policy, wouldn't vote on it. They took it under consideration, and I could hear a parent yelling from the crowd on the live stream saying, "How long is that going to take? How many more months do our daughters have to share their restroom with a boy? How long is this going to take?" And they don't want to wait. These parents don't want to wait. They want to protect their daughters' privacy and safety. So yes, they did. They formed this parent organization. It's an unincorporated association of parents, and we know because our organization, your organization, have filed these types of complaints with the Office for Civil Rights, that the Trump administration has an executive order out there saying that under Title IX, under any other regulation, this administration is going to interpret male to mean male and female to mean female, period. Gender identity does not factor into that definition. So, I really appreciate that this administration is serious about protecting girls' privacy, girls' spaces, et cetera, and enforcing Title IX as it was intended to be enforced. So that is a tool that these parents have should they want to pursue that option. And we right now we're exploring all options, because if the school board's not going to do something, then maybe a little pressure isn't a bad thing to ensure that this school is complying with Title IX and protecting the girls' rights. Like I said, only the girls are impacted by this. So definitely something that we're seriously looking into. And the other thing that's coming up is school board elections. So there are some parents running that don't like this policy, and the community is, we're not involved with that, but the community is absolutely paying attention to that.
Right. And like I said, sometimes school boards will flip and they'll flip back. Those parents, if they do win, they need to be ready to go.
Yeah.
And thank goodness there are these model policies. There are organizations like yours ready to support them if they are in place and ready to address this. Your advice to concerned parents in other school districts, is this shaping up to be a model for other school districts, how things are happening in New Richmond?
Parents in any school district across the country should look into what their school's policy is regarding bathroom use and whether they respect and protect girl-only spaces, whether that's bathrooms, locker rooms, showers, changing areas. Definitely ask about the policy, whether it's written or unwritten. Try to understand what's going on, because you don't want to be like these parents in New Richmond and then they had no idea. So try to be proactive about it. And if any parents are candidates for school board or on the school board, I would recommend getting out in front of this. Do your research. We're far enough along now that parents are more and more willing to speak out.
Okay.
I think the law has changed. I mean, we don't have new precedent here in the Seventh Circuit yet, but things are moving along. And I think there's a chance that this poor decision, Whitaker is the name of the case, could be overturned. School boards need to know, administrators, parents, that there's risk on both sides, and what side do you want to be on? I've told people this is not necessarily where I saw my legal career going, but here we are, and it is an important legal issue, and we want to protect all kids and especially support girls' safety in schools.
Part of that process is making sure that Title IX and its regulations and the definitions embedded within it are crystal clear. So there have been what we call at DFI, this regulatory ping pong between administrations. There was the Obama administration and their interpretation of Title IX, and they were moving a particular direction. And then the first Trump administration came in, put a Title IX rule in place that then was re-regulated in the Biden administration. And then the Biden administration did not fare well in the courts. So first of all, where are we with Title IX? And what needs to happen next?
I think it is really important for everybody to understand that the Biden version of the Title IX regulations has been held to be unlawful nationwide. Anyone that was following the litigation challenging the Biden regulations as unlawful knows that they lost every time, and eventually they lost on a nationwide basis. So the effect of that is as if the Title IX regulations promulgated by the Biden administration were never in effect. We are now back to the effective regulations being those from the Trump administration in 2020. But as you and I have discussed before, if one goes to the Code of Federal Regulations website, it's still the Biden version of the regulations. And I think this is really, really confusing, especially for school board members, that they go maybe look that up and they still see gender identity in and part of those Title IX regulations without understanding, because this is complex. Why would they necessarily understand this? That those are not actually enforceable at all. So I would love to see the Title IX regulations. I would love to see the Trump administration promulgate a new version of these Title IX regulations that is very, very clear about what sex means and what facilities use means. And even better than that, for Congress to pass a law clarifying that so we don't have this regulatory ping pong that you mentioned. That would be, I think, the best outcome.
Yeah, DFI agrees. And in partnership with Defending Education has put forward a Respect Title IX Act. Other of our allies and partner organizations also are on board for this model bill, which would make it really clear what are the definitions of male and female. No, gender identity is not what we're talking about when we're talking about sex. Those are different concepts. And so there's that model law. I don't know how much is going to get done in Congress over the next few years. But as you said, there's the opportunity to address this through a rule, through regulations. So we also have put forward a model regulatory option. And the Trump administration probably should get going on that if they haven't already, because it's not a fast process, right?
No, it's not a fast process. We would love to see some more movement on that because, the reality is we're hearing from board members all the time and parents, and they're confused. They go look this up. It still says gender identity online. And to explain the regulatory process and why it still says that, but it's not enforceable, if you're not doing this like we are day to day, then it's difficult to understand. It's confusing. So yes, I think those absolutely need to be revised and hope that gets done sooner rather than later.
Right. And certainly that would align with what was set out in that early executive order that you mentioned. So this was definitely the intention of and the policy goal for the Trump administration. They made that clear in the executive orders really around this topic. So this would be the fulfillment of that. And then it would provide this much needed clarity. When you're talking close to 14,000 school districts, often many of them very small, like the one that we've been talking about today, we need to help them. We need to be as clear as possible. These are people who are wearing a lot of hats. They're getting bad legal advice. We need to make sure that everything is crystal clear as far as what the policy of the land is. Public opinion has shifted as awareness has grown on this topic. I can't see that there would be that much resistance to putting something like this in place in regulation.
No, I don't think so either, especially given the fact that we, the executive order was a great step in the right direction. The actions of OCR and how they're enforcing Title IX, great step. Obviously, the legal win, which found that the Biden regulations were unlawful and unenforceable, all good things. But now we need to do that next step. And like you said, we know it's a process, but people are confused all around the country. I think that next step is fixing these regulations. And of course, you're going to have pushback from the usual crowd. But I do think, like you said, that public opinion is shifting. People are tired of this. We're starting to see a little bit more common sense come back into the conversation.
Cory, as we wrap up, I often ask guests to address a myth that bothers them the most. Normally, I'm asking my school choice guests, which is another hat that you wear. You certainly are an advocate for school choice as well. Is there a myth about parental rights, about Title IX that really bothers you that you'd want to address today?
You know, Ginny, I've listened to your podcast in the past, and I knew you were going to ask this, and I did not come up with something. You know, what I would say about parental rights, and this, I think it ties to Title IX. I want parents to know that they have a right to speak up and advocate for their children. This is a little bit of an overlap with some of our other cases going on right now, but parents are being intimidated into silence, told that they don't have a voice, they don't matter, they're going to make things worse. They've even been had law enforcement show up to their doors sometimes and been served with cease and desist letters.
Oh my gosh.
This is a First Amendment issue, but it's also related to Title IX because parents, if you want to criticize your district's policies, you have a free speech right to do so. And that's what I really want parents to know. And if they get pushback, then they can reach out to organizations like ours and we'll fight for their rights.
I love that. Remind us of the website that has those tools that you mentioned.
Schoolboardpolicies.org. That'll be the easiest way to get to the website with all our model policies and a few other school board resources as well.
And how can people follow your work?
Yeah, the Will work is at will-law.org, so you can see a lot about our litigation and policy work. I'm also on Twitter. I don't post a whole lot, but I'm on Twitter as Cory J. Brewer, or Will Twitter is WI Law Liberty. So yeah, we'd appreciate any support, any follows.
Cory, thank you for your commitment to education freedom and parental rights, and thank you for joining Freedom to Learn.
Thank you so much.
Freedom to Learn is a production of the Defense of Freedom Institute. Learn more about our work at dfipolicy.org. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Send feedback, questions, and episode ideas to podcast@dfipolicy.org. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, please follow and review Freedom to Learn on your favorite podcast app and share it with a friend.